Greetings, my name is Ty Brown. I am happy that we're here today. I'm joined by Richard Newsome. Richard is a Director of Behavioral Health at Care First, which is traumatic brain injury rehabilitation, and Coach Mark Dantonio. Coach Dantonio was our position coach at Michigan State, former head coach at Michigan State, and former head coach at University of Cincinnati. Of course, I was at Michigan State from 96 to 2001. Skid, you were there from 98?
97 to 2000.
2000.
Yep.
Thanks, Jeremy. Here with Mark Dantonio. And Coach, what a great job against one of the best quarterbacks probably in Big Ten history, and you guys really shut him down. One touchdown pass, that was all. You got to be really happy.
Yeah, I'm really happy for our seniors, Richard Newsome, Demario Suggs, and Ronaldo Hill. They all played outstanding. I think we came to play today, and I've been saying all along, we prepared to play, and they had the route concepts down, and they really matched them well and played very well.
What was the package that you guys had in line for this game? Because they have a different offense than you've seen all year.
Right. You know, they run a lot of no backs and things like that of that nature. So we've got our guy Richard Brown in there, who's sort of been a jack of all trades this year, and he's done a tremendous job. So at times, you know, he used to be a defensive back. At times we had 7 DBs in the game, so he could do some things from that perspective, underneath routes and everything. But basically what we did was played our package, matched them up, and you know, we're successful.
Skiddy and I are super excited to have Coach D here to reminisce about some things, talk about leadership. If you ever seen me in a video, I love talking about leadership. Skiddy likes loving on people, and Coach D, this is the head coach. So we're super excited to be here, Coach. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be down here, and it's great to see you guys and be a part of your lives.
Yes, sir. I'll start this off, Skid, if you don't mind. I actually want to ask you, Coach, about leadership. And you've talked to me before. You know, I'm a big leadership guy. And I wonder about, like, you worked with some of the elephants in the coaching profession, right? You talk about Jim Tressel and Glenn Mason. You talk about Nick Saban, and a lot of the assistant coaches you work with too are actually well known for some of the things they've done. So what I wonder is, like, your philosophy on leadership as a head coach. What did you take from some of those guys, and then as you developed your own philosophy, what became your philosophy?
Yeah, it's pretty evident as I went through the process. You know, I coached for 41 years. And like you said, I've been around some great coaches, you know, Earl Bruce, Jim Young. These guys were legendary coaches early on. I was a young coach at that time, and then Jim Tressel and Nick Saban and Glenn Mason and Jim Dennison, guys that I worked for. So I had an opportunity to see a lot of different people. I played at South Carolina, had an opportunity to see how they did things. But so you saw good leaders, and you saw some leaders that weren't so good. But I think the great ones, the ones that have been successful, always had a plan. They had a plan, and they dreamed that plan, and everything that they did, you know, really evolved around that plan, the organizational part. Okay, how are you going to get from point A to point B to point C, D, E, and F? I really felt like you had to dream big. That's something that we've talked about all the time, and something I probably said even when you guys played, you know, dream big, be the best you can be, and, you know, look out there and try and win championships or be pro football players or get your degree. But I always felt like, you know, you had to have people that had a commitment. You had to share that commitment back and forth. You had to be able to trust each other. And maybe the most important thing is you had to be able to communicate with people. And so you got feedback and allowed them to buy in and empower them to be part of the process. Because there's no question when you talk about leadership, there's a lot of different variables with it, but it is a process. And you got to get people believing, because if they don't believe in the process, they don't believe in the plan, they don't believe in the dream, then when things get tough, and inevitably you're going to hit some adversity and things are going to get tough, you know, you're not going to make it through that part.
Right. Got to make it through the tough part. There is a question I have about the evolution of your leadership, right? I mean, I think you were a graduate assistant twice from what I remember reading about you. And like I said, worked for some of the greats.
Yeah, I was Jim. I was hanging in there.
Hey, well, look, some of the coaches have a philosophy of staying broke as long as possible, right? Because you can learn more, or the job for you hasn't come yet. But you know, you as a position coach, like with us, you told us, you know, be the best person we can be the best man we can be. What you do on and off the field should tie together in terms of how you play and how you act in life. Then you become a coordinator. Actually, you were a coordinator a couple of times too, right? From position coach to coordinator, from coordinator to position coach back to coordinator. And then you become a head coach. So I wonder about the evolution of what you talked about in terms of making sure you communicate and make sure you establish what you need to establish and what you believe in. So when times get tough, you obviously learn from a position coach working under Coach Saban when we were there, Coach Williams. and you go off to be a coordinator at Ohio State. Tell us about the evolution of leadership when you start getting into that senior part of your career.
Yeah, I mean, that is an interesting question. Basically you've got, you're a position coach, so you're sort of in charge, maybe 8 to 12 people, 15, 16 players. When you became a coordinator, you sort of are in charge of, half the team. And then as a head coach, you take in all 120 plus. So there is an evolution to that. And in every step of the way, you get, as a secondary, you have plans or goals that are specific to the secondary. How they played, are they losing leverage, all these different things. How did the secondary play today? And then it became, well, how does the defense play today? And you lose, to go up, you got to give a little bit too. To go up and become the coordinator, you can't micromanage everything. You got to give your assistants latitude that are working with you. And then to become a head coach, how did the team do? Didn't care about the defense, offense, special teams anymore.
Right.
How did the team do? That's
Right.
the bottom line. Did we win or did we lose? Because then it really becomes a little bit more, it's on you a little bit more. But the evolution of that, I don't know. I always looked at it as it's not just about coaching, it's about people and growth. And, I started coaching because I loved football and because I didn't know what else to do, really, when I got out of college. And that's what I had been involved in. And then I stayed with it. But it became a little bit more about watching people grow and helping them through a process, through a time of their life from 18 to 22, where you guys both know and remember, when you're 18, you're a different person when you're 22.
True.
There's no question. True. I think it's the experiences that you have from 18 to 22 that really starts to mold you as a young person and then into a man. So I watched people grow, and I looked at the aspect and said, hey, you got to have relationships with people. Those relationships have to stand the test of time. Again, based on commitment, trust, communication. When there's a problem, usually it's because of communication. You got to believe in the process, but you got to have that relationship, and it's got to stand the test of time. You got to have a passion other than football. I really believe that, because football will end for all of us. It's ended for me. It's going to end for everybody. So you've got to have something to pour yourself into outside of that. Don't ask me what that is, because I'm not sure sometimes, even today, but you need to. Got to get your education in that process, because, your education is key to your development. You got to win at what you're doing. So you got to be cutting edge in everything that you're doing. You got to constantly look at it. What's the better way to get your results, or who's doing it? Is it too much for players? Is it too little for players to handle? But you got to win. So you're looking for facilities, you're looking for players, you're looking for technique, you're looking for all the different things, and you're breaking it all down, which is a big part of the job. I really think that you've got to do something for other people to make it, you got to be a light in the community, which I think both of you guys have done a great job with that, in your lives. And then you got to be a worker, man. You got to learn how to work. You can't be a lazy man and be a football coach or a football player. You can't. It's not possible. If you want a career in those things, and that's sort of those 5 things, sort of what I've tried to shape my life about, in terms of my football life, and what we've tried to do, and the evolution of that is just always become. You can always get better, and there's always another page to turn, and you win the Rose Bowl, and okay, hey, let's go to the playoffs. You don't go to the playoffs, and the next year you go to the playoffs, and then you take a step back, but you're always trying to get better.
Yeah.
Trying to develop. So the evolution is just what you said. It is an ongoing process.
Yeah, you talk about players 18 to 22. One thing Skiddy and I were talking about was just finding leadership in players. What was that question you had for Coach about?
Well, my question is more kind of like a personal question. And for me, when I think of Coach D, I don't really think of football. I think of a father figure, because there was never a point. I never called that much throughout, me. Yeah. But
you don't need to.
That's true.
You really don't. If you've got a solid relationship, you sort of you know, you got guys where you see them and you just pick up right where you left off.
That's
Doesn't
very
mean
true.
that you got a call.
Yep. But every single time I called, you picked up.
Yeah.
Every time. There's not a time that you didn't, and that speaks volumes to me, right? Coach D as the person, the leader outside the field. And so my question to you, so I know I came in, right, rough around the edges, then you sandpaper that off, and it's rough around that.
18-year-old from Fostoria.
True. So, and a lot of people, maybe that that support I might have wore somebody down, another person. But so my question to you is, how do you know where to invest, or which players to invest your energy into? And I know you give it to everyone, but some people are not all the way bought in to wanting to. I was a fiery, tempery guy, but at the same, and I wasn't going to class. It was just so many strikes, you know what I'm saying? But you always set me down and said, hey, look, Skiddy, this is what you can do. This is where you at. This is how you get there. How do you know, how can you tell when a player is invested to pour more into, or to kind of like, well, I don't even know how to say the other end of that question.
Yeah, you know, I understand that. You know, I mean, I've tried to really invest myself in everybody's lives. I really, truly have. And I think that what Jim Tressel does is amazing in that respect. But even as a head coach, I met with every single player for at least 20 to 30 minutes once a year to talk about not just about football, but about their life. You know, what's going on in their family, because what I've found is so many people are dealing with things in their families away from football. When they come into the bubble with the football practice, and you know, you expect them to be all in and all, but you know, people got problems, and you got to find out what those problems are and be a part of the solution the best you can. Doesn't mean you can be the solution, but you can listen. So I've tried to listen to our players and build into them. And you know, how do I know when to invest that little extra into somebody? You know, you just know. I don't know how, but you just know that. But I've tried to take young people and watch them grow and be a part of the process and be a part of their lives. And I really think that when I look back at my athletic career, which started really in the second grade playing football. I'm 65 now, so imagine that. I remember the coaches who cared about me. I didn't remember the coaches that necessarily were the best coaches. I remember the coaches who cared about me, and that's all the way up through college. And so I decided at a very early age that in the coaching profession, that I was going to be that kind of coach. Doesn't mean I was going to be any less tough or any less technical or whatever it was, but I was going to listen, and I was going to try and get better every day, and that I was going to be part of the process. You know, I wasn't going to drill the process into people. I was going to be part of the process, part of the solution, and part of that dream. And that's what's kept me in coaching so long. And that's really why it's hard to stop, or it was hard to stop. But you also get to a point where you're sacrificing a lot of other parts of your life to do that, you know, and it was time.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. I understand Skiddy's question, right? Even for me as a walk-on, I come in, and there's a point for some of us who were walk-ons when you realize, okay, everybody's bigger, everybody's faster, everybody's stronger. And like you guys always emphasize, there's going to be more scholarship players coming in. It's part of a business, Ty, you got to understand. And so with that emphasized enough, you realize, okay, so am I happy with being a scout team player, or am I going to go on with the rest of my life and decide to do what else I want to do? And I think I came and talked to you one time and said, Coach, if I don't have a 3.0 by the end of the summer, I'm probably not going to be on the football team anymore, because I mean, at this point, I got to focus on the rest of my life. So I did have that 3.0, but came back and accepted that I was a scout team player, and that changed the way I played and changed my attitude a little bit. And I don't know what you saw in terms of Skiddy, what you saw in me. Like Skiddy said, what you saw in him, you guys decided to give me a scholarship, knowing I probably wasn't going to be a corner on the field much, but I mean, I appreciate that. Like Skiddy said, she appreciates it too.
Yeah.
I want to ask you.
I remember that.
You remember?
Oh yeah.
Okay, some other things I'm gonna ask you if you remember too here in a little bit too, but I do want to ask you. You mentioned something about when you decide to get out, that there's a mental checklist of when it's time to retire, or taking on a bigger scale when it's time to give something up. How do you know when you give up on a passion? How do you know if this is either A, a sunk cost because we're not going to be successful at it, or B, I've been doing this for so long, but I realize I've neglected other parts of my life that I need to invest in, or C, I'm not effective at what I'm doing anymore. Like, how did you go through a mental checklist when you talk about that? Obviously, family is always going to be one of them, but I wonder if there was some checklist that you were developing over the last few years. Yeah.
No, there really wasn't. It was just sort of every year I would reset the program in February, because that's when recruiting was going to be done, and that's when I was going to have a time to take a breath and reassess everything. That's when I always did our critiques with our players, started our critique with our players and our program and our offense, defense, special team, and everything, the strength, the academics, everything that you could think of. I would say, okay, where are we at? And ask our entire staff to make a very extensive critique. And so that's when I hit the reset button. And what I found is that I was starting to feel like I couldn't give 150%. I can give 100%, but it demands 150. And it also demands a vision down the road to look and say, okay, hey, what's the program going to be like 3 years from now? And, for the past couple of years, I would say, when I would talk to recruits, I would say, I'm dealing in the present. How much longer are you going to coach? Hey man, I'm just dealing in the present. I'm going to have an impact on your life. We're going to do this year. And I sort of figured out that you probably can't be the head coach like that and be as effective. You have to be able to look at least 3 years into the future and be able to do that. And then, like I said earlier, there's a lot of things that I was sacrificing. My children had left. So now my wife is no longer with your children, raising your children. She's by herself, and I'm spending 90 hours away from work. So that played a big part into it. And so there were a lot of things, and I still didn't know if I was or I wasn't, but I knew I was going to probably have to make some changes and things of that nature. But, I really wasn't, and I thought, well, change might have to start at the top. Yeah. But, I was okay. I'm okay with it. But I miss it. Because anything you love to do, you're going to miss it. But there is a point in time when you start to develop other passions and you say, okay, I'm going to do this instead, or don't know what that is necessarily.
So are you knitting now?
Not knitting. But, I've got time. And, I think the biggest thing is I've got time. Yeah. Where I never had time for myself or for my family. Can't tell you how many things I've missed over the past 30 years of marriage. I've got time now to do some of the things that need to be done as a whether it be as a father or as a grandfather or as a husband. I've got time.
Since we're on that retirement, let's say you never ever coach again. Are you able to just enjoy a football game watching it? Or are you always critiquing, that's cover 3, he should probably blitz this bit, that's a pressure, the quarterback is not or can you just watch the game and enjoy the game?
I probably was able to watch the game a little bit more when I was coaching and enjoy the game.
Okay.
Because, I'm so drilled into what we're doing. And how does that affect that game? I watch the game over here if it affects what we're doing.
Okay.
And if I watch a different game, it has no effect on it, then it's... But now, I look at things and sort of like, I'm a little harder on them.
Okay.
Like, well, what
are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing here? Coaching, are you letting it happen? What are you doing?
Right.
Yeah, but exactly.
One last question for me.
But I'm good with it.
Okay. One last question. For me, I'm a big mental health guy, right? Meditate, I do yoga, all of these different things. So for my question for you is, life, is kind of like a scale, right? And you have I'm just assuming you got so many responsibilities as the head coach, or, you know, you have your family, which tilts the scale. You have all of these responsibilities for the players, everything you have to do, which tilts that scale. How do you, or what were you doing, or how do you now balance that scale for your mental health? How do you decompress and so that you can keep giving that 150% that's needed to even be?
How did I do it?
Yeah.
Well, I started my morning every day with 2 things. One, I would get my Bible and pray a little bit from a faith perspective, because I felt like that had to be a higher power than what I was doing. You know, there has to be something more important than what you're doing. Otherwise, you go crazy. Okay, and number 2 is we had a devotional every day in our staff meeting with our assistants, where and it would just go around the table. And, you know, by the time I got done, when I got there, I didn't have as many assistants, but now I've got many more. And it seems like now they've got many more.
Okay, right.
But, you know,
right.
But I would have everybody do a devotional. It could be something, just, you know, something positive to sort of put a positive spin on, some faith, but most of them were just something positive, put a positive spin on the day. And sort of, you know, some people would bring a video in or something like that. But I think what you have to do is sit down and say, hey, everything's all right. And regardless of where you're at in turmoil, because there's always going to be some, that everything's going to be okay. And you got to be able to take a deep breath and say, okay, what are we doing today? And have fun with it. A big part of my job was being around players, which, you know, I had fun with that. I mean, that was the best part of my job. Really, beyond the football field, walking down through the hallway and seeing a player, you know, and saying, what's up? You know, those were or laughing about something that you did.
Yeah.
Can you believe
Right.
what just happened? Yeah, and you know how many, that's what you sit around and talk about now, probably.
Yeah,
Can you believe?
Yeah.
So those type of things kept you loose. And I just, and I know everybody always thought that, you know, when you looked at me I hear this, that when you saw Coach D on the sideline, he was wound up, wound tight. I really wouldn't. You know, not in practice, not on every day-to-day living, and that's what helped. Because I think if you're really wound tight, you're going to struggle in this profession.
It sounds good 20 years later for us, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Being wound tight.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you a question here. So, you know, we're all 40s and we've grown, and some of us, I don't, but some of us have families, right? Kids, wives, ex-wives, whatever it is. And I like to pick my guys' brains on, you know, I'm a big leadership guy in philosophy. So I always wonder, like I asked Skid, and I actually want to ask him this, do you have a philosophy in terms of raising your son, right? And I wonder about you in terms of, you know, the family and your philosophy on, you're a leader in your own household, right? Well, I mean, as a coach, your wife was probably the leader in the household. But Skid, I mean, that's a question for you. Like, do you have a philosophy? How old is Trust now?
He's 8.
8 years old. So do you have a philosophy in terms of leading Trust?
I don't know if I have a philosophy per se, but I am the student in that relationship.
Okay.
He's my teacher. So he teaches me how to be his parent. I have to be willing enough to allow him to speak and to listen. A lot of times, sometimes I tell him what to do and he has a better way to do it. And so I have to be able to watch the film of my parenting and make corrections and give him some credit, a lot of credit, because a lot of times he knows what he wants to do. So I have to remind myself, like, hey, listen to him instead of trying to tell him the way I think that he should do something.
Okay. That's interesting.
So I try to be open and try to be the student in that relationship.
That's big, Coach.
You know, a lot of that, what Rich just said, but I've always, and I've stood in front of our whole football team and said the same thing. If you've got discipline And if you're mature, you can be successful. So I always talk to them about what's their discipline. I don't care what it is, whether it's going to school or whatever it is. There's structure in what you have to do, and you have to be organized. There's a certain discipline in what you do, getting up every day, whatever it is. And then you've got to be mature enough to handle the downsides and mature enough to handle the upsides. Because there's, you don't want to be too high or too low. You want to be even keeled in that respect. I do think, as I said before, faith is important to me, that they should have some faith opportunities to be faith-based, and so that, for me to show them that they're going to have to make their own decisions. But those two things, I would always, if you asked my two daughters today, they would probably look at me and go, I know that. Discipline and maturity. Yeah, discipline and maturity. Because I would always say that. And I think that carried over to our football team. Can you handle it on 4th and 2? Can you be disciplined enough to not jump off sides? Can you be mature enough to, when you lose the championship game to Wisconsin and Big Ten championship at the end, to be able to push that aside and push through and come back 2 years later and win it, But there's a process. You have to understand the process first and all the things and the goals, but you have to be disciplined, because nobody wants to do the things that you have to do to be successful. Plus, you're not always going to be successful. There are going to be some times where you're going to fall down. We had a player, Trey Barksdale, whose dad, Dr. Edwin Barksdale, would always say, it's to fall forward. Make sure if you struggle with something, you're always taking a step towards the end result.
I'll tell you a lesson I learned, Coach, at Michigan State. We were playing Notre Dame. And we had beaten Notre Dame 4 or 5 years in a row, and that's a big rivalry. Of course, way back in the days, in the early 1900s, they played us when Michigan wouldn't, so we respect that rivalry a lot. But the head coach, right before the game, one of our coaches came in and told us that the head coach ignored all you guys when you walked up to shake their hands. And they just turned and walked off when you went to shake their hands. And Bobby Williams was the head coach, first-year head coach, first black head coach, I believe, in the Big Ten. So some of us took it as offense, a racial offense. Like, okay, so they want to be disrespectful. Game plays, tight game. At the end, Herb Haygood, one of our great receivers, catches a slant route and takes it all the way in, and we win last few seconds of the game.
And here the Irish find themselves with a 1-point lead, and it's 4th and 10, Michigan State. Smoker across the middle. He's got Haygood on the run. Look out, good. Might take it. Inside the 30. Touchdown, Michigan State.
As I'm walking off, I walked past the coach and I was like, yeah, we won, and they didn't even want to shake our hands. And I said it, and it was directed at him, and there was a picture of it, and it looked pretty bad. Never draw off to the head coach, right? So Coach Williams sat me down before the picture came out and said, Ty, the coach told me you were, drawing off to the head coach. I said, no, Coach, I just was walking past, and I might have said it, but I didn't direct him. Then the next day he brought me in and slid the picture in front of me. Like, Ty, this ain't just walking past right here. My hands are up in his face looking at him. So I got to suspend you for a week, blah, blah, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He said, oh, yeah, Coach D wants to talk to you. So just go sit out. So I sat outside the office, in the old office, sitting outside the door. You walked out your office. You said, come here. You walked me over to the women's bathroom, closed the door behind us, locked the door on the women's bathroom, proceeded to tell me, darn it, Ty, we give you this scholarship and, you just went in on me. Like, you out here representing us, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which was interesting. The women's bathroom thing was real interesting. But the point is, at that point is when I learned that I represented way more than just the name on the back of my jersey, right? So many people poured into me. At that point, when I got in trouble, I wore number 10, which was Ray Hill's number. Rest in peace, Ray Hill. I had Michigan State on the front of my jersey. I was part of the Big Ten conference. I represented Mark Dantonio, who was our position coach, and I represented Coach Bobby Williams, who we were so proud of had become head coach. And all the rest of the people on the Brown side or the Mattingly side, which were from Ypsilanti and Lansing and everybody else who had poured into me from that point forward. So my philosophy from that point forward became earn the respect of someone putting their name on the back of your jersey. And when you get into a position, endow people with your name on the back of their jersey as you represent them. And so that was a big lesson for me in terms of getting in trouble. People calling me from Los Angeles like, hey, man, what happened up there? I heard you got in a little bit. I mean, it was crazy. But that was a big lesson for me in terms of earning names on the back of your jersey and representing more than just yourself when you're standing there. So I appreciate that. I don't know if I appreciate the women's basketball thing, but I do.
I can't remember that.
they always going to tell you they can't remember, Coach. That's funny.
Yeah, but I think that when you go back and you talk about every single player on the football team, scholarship, non-scholarship, you have opportunities to make statements along the way.
Right.
And again, like I said, you're not always going to do it the right way, but it's about growth. It's about growth. And, we're all going to grow in different ways as we move forward in our lives.
Exactly. I'll ask you two questions, a couple topics here before we wrap, and then we can wrap up. And Skiddy might have another question too. The first one I have for you, Coach, is back to leadership and back to becoming a head coach. Early in your tenure, University of Cincinnati, how did you handle the first time, and Skiddy may be related because the position he's in now, how did you handle the first time you had a challenging situation, and not just a hard decision about a player, but like maybe an assistant coach might have challenged you and you're like, I'm a head coach. This doesn't sound like you're supposed to talk to me like this. But in your brain, you had to figure out how to maneuver that to keep your influence and all those kind of things. Does that question make sense?
Yeah, how do you handle a difficult situation?
Early on, right? Because now you're a new head coach. And you just got on to Cincinnati.
Well, I think you have to earn your way into people's lives a little bit. And there's going to be some challenges along the way, and you're going to have to sort of steady the ship a little bit and not overreact, and let people have their say, and then step back, and then step forward, reassert yourself. So I can't really think of a coach ever doing that with me, but certainly players, and you got to step back, you got to listen, and then there's always an opportunity, what I've always said, if there's an altercation on the field or something like that, you've got to go off the field and just separate yourselves for a time, let yourself cool down a little bit, and then go forward. So there's been a lot of have so-and-so come to my office, and just sit down, we got to talk through it. But then I go back to what I said before, communication is so important because things can be taken out of context at times, both ends of the spectrum now, both ends of the stick. And it's important to be able to come to some type of understanding when there's a problem and talk it through.
Right. Yeah, excellent. Skiddy.
Yeah, I can finish off my part by asking you, I know, Coach, in my life, I've passed up on a lot of opportunities that I didn't all the way know how to accomplish. So I might have an opportunity for this job or even see it posted. I'm like, well, I qualify for this, but I've never really done it before. Yeah. So if I get this job, I'm not gonna really all the way know how to do it. So I wouldn't fill out the application or whatever. Was there ever a point in time in your career to where you was like, well, I'm not quite sure how to do this?
Yeah, a lot of.
Is that true? Okay.
It's a lot of. Well, how did I get from point A to point B? To point C. You sort of wonder, am I qualified for that? Even am I ready for this or that kind of stuff? But I've always looked at it and said, if this a little bit differently, maybe then I didn't look for more money. I didn't look for more. I looked for more responsibility so that I could impact more people. And so being the head coach at Cincinnati, I was, for example, leaving Ohio State was very difficult for me to do. Leaving Michigan State, very difficult for me to do. And leaving Cincinnati, very difficult, really difficult. But in every aspect I asked myself, I leaned on my wife, my family, and then I asked myself, will I have more impact on more people? Do I have a chance to impact more people at the next position I'm going to? And if the answer was yes, then I said, okay, let's go. And in every step of the way, I had more of an impact. So, you want to coach, you want to impact young people, you want to watch them grow, you want to try and make their lives better. So was I going to be able to do that by being a coordinator with more people or by being a head coach, and so that's how I tried to do it. And then along the way, I just sort of like, things get crazy a little bit. My job, my life changed like that. Literally in every one of those steps, it was like Jim Tressel got the job, he called you off for the coordinator job, I took it. It was days. It was like one day I'm a coach at Michigan State, next day I'm the coordinator.
Right.
Same thing happened at Cincinnati. One day I'm coaching at Ohio State on Friday. On Monday I'm the head coach at Cincinnati. And the same thing happened again on Michigan State. One day I'm Saturday, I'm coaching the final game at Cincinnati. Monday morning I'm the head coach at Michigan State. Well, how's that happen so quick? Which is sort of weird. But it's all part of my journey, I guess, and what I would say, my blessings. I would say that because there's no question that along the way that I've been blessed.
What else are you good at, Coach? So you coached for 41, 42 years, right? Now you're not coaching.
Not much.
Okay, not much. Can you cook? Can you draw? Can you?
Are you a painter?
What do you paint? What else are you good at?
I can.
Fish.
I can throw a line in the water. I don't know if I can catch anything. I'm working on golf. Okay. So I'm trying to get better, but I'm chasing that dream too. Okay. And I can, projects. I like doing little projects.
Like wood projects?
Well, whatever it might be, projects around the house that need to be done. Because there's always something to do. Seems like. Not a good drawer. Okay. Probably could write if I took the time to sit down and write. Okay. I think I probably could. I need my football fixes. Okay. So, in some ways, sitting here and rehashing some things, that's a football fix for me. It's something that, I enjoy doing and was a big part of my life. So, football fix. So, I took a week and went around the state, went to Cincinnati, went to Pitt to see Coach Narduzzi, went up to Michigan State. Okay. Just sort of being around football a little bit. So I like that. So I'm staying busy, but it's amazing when people say, hey, what are you doing? I don't know, I'm staying busy. I don't take naps. I don't watch TV, so I'm staying busy. So again, every day I make my little to-do list, whatever's on it, I try and get done.
Well, Coach, from the bottom of my heart, I love you. Yeah. Thank you for pouring into me, and I know without you in my life probably would have went a different direction. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah. And I'm gonna say one more thing before we completely wrap on that note. We talk about the guys, the headbangers, right? The guys in that room that we used to get together every time, headbangers at the end. Most of us are successful, right? And one of the guys, Newsome Tai M, I'm sure you remember Ubam, had his challenges. He was in medical school, went through a little bit of trouble. He's built now a big traumatic brain injury type of facility called Care First, and he's done a wonderful job at it. Skiddy works for him. I'm up here interning with him. I wonder if you can just give us some insight on when you see somebody like Ubam who has come through. I think you remember what he went through. If somebody like Ubam or Skiddy or me who has come through whatever we've come through, and now we're off doing our things, families, trying to run businesses, furthering our education. A final word on when you see players. I know you have a ton of them, especially as becoming the head coach, but when you see players go on to become successful.
I've been fortunate, again, blessed to be successful as a head coach. Most wins ever at Michigan State. Okay.
Beautiful.
However, I hope that I'm defined on who I was as a person and what I did for people. And that's what I want to be defined as. And so when I see that, those are wins. Those are huge wins for me. Those are championships. When I sit here and I see what you guys have done, or Nemo, or so many others, whether you're in the NFL or not, or Mike Austin's working. You remember Mike Austin?
Absolutely.
Or seeing these guys and coming across them and bumping into them, or talking to them on the phone, or getting a text from them. Those are wins. Those are big wins for me because that's why I've coached. So I can't tell you the joy that I have when I see somebody being successful, because I know that there's a ripple effect in what I've done. Right. There's going to be a ripple effect in every shoe you tied when you were working in elementary school, Skiddy. There's a ripple effect. They're going to remember Richard Newsome, and I'm a part of that.
Absolutely.
So that's what I'm trying to do.
Beautiful.
Which is excellent. This has been an excellent conversation, Coach. Skid, you said you had to say anything else for Coach D?
No, I'm
here?
good.
Yep.
No, that's it.
Excellent conversation. We really appreciate you. Of course, we got our bowl rings on from the Citrus Bowl. I appreciate earning a scholarship. I appreciate paying for that part of my degree. I actually was out of financial aid that year. And you ended up giving me a scholarship, so that was great. Skiddy, appreciate everything. We really appreciate you joining us here.
Well, thanks so much for having me on. It's great to be down here, and I look forward to every single day that I have an interaction with one of my former players or the people that I've been involved with, because, you know, when you talk about being a light, you truly have been a light to me. So thank you.
Awesome.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for having me.
That was Coach Mark Dantonio, former head coach of Michigan State and University of Cincinnati. Richard Newsome, Director of Behavioral Health at Care First, which is a company that a Spartan is running now. And of course, I'm Ty Brown. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today.